Jazz Smith. Welcome to the Naked Ambition podcast. How are you? Hi to everyone out there that has tuned in live as well. I am your host, Fiona Triarca. And as you know, on the Naked Ambition podcast, we get to speak with the people who are making an impact all over the world in areas of leadership, culture, design, and innovation. And we are utterly thrilled to have Jasmine Smith here today, who is the head of people and culture. She's the director of people and culture at Smith. She is an incredibly passionate people development person, and you bring with you techniques that are inspired by positive psychology and behavioral science. And you also have a really unique whole person approach, which you bring to your work. And you also hold the title, which is quite exciting today, of the most subscribers that we have had people tune in.
Wow.
Which is absolutely fabulous. So without further ado, welcome, Jazz. Thank you so much for joining us.
Hey, everybody. Hey, Fee. Thank you. Thanks, everybody, for joining. Really happy to be here. Always love a chat. So, yeah, more than happy to be here.
Beautiful. So firstly, just how are you? We're in a bit of a crazy time right now in the world. There's obviously a lot going on out there. Some of us feel like maybe we're back in it down here in Melbourne, and some of us are emerging lots of mixed emotions. How are you doing, more importantly?
Yeah, I mean, I think, I guess first sort of acknowledging the, all of the privilege and kind of all the benefits that I've got. I'm still employed. I've got a safe place to live. I've got a support network around me, which I'm super grateful for. Understanding that there's like lots of people that this has impacted, really seriously. And so yes, super grateful for that. I mean, in terms of how I'm going, I feel like, from a lockdown 2.0 sort of being in this now, I do feel a bit differently about it. The first time, I think the sense of not really knowing what we were dealing with and the potential catastrophe that was sort of awaiting us, and even I guess that sense of novelty of kind of suddenly everybody sort of going to working from home and everybody adjusting. And then, by the end of lockdown one, it was sort of almost that had become that, a bit of a grind, and, people were really keen for things to get back to normal. This time I feel more, I probably feel a bit more optimistic. It's not that I think it's going to be easy at the end of this, but I think that sense of having been here before has certainly helped me reframe it a little bit in my mind, and seeing the benefits that are there, and sort of taking advantage of the time that we have. So yeah, I mean, overall, I would say feeling grateful, feeling optimistic. I'm super. One of the biggest benefits has been being able to spend all that incidental time with my daughters, who are 18 and 22. So, we were sort of ships in the night for a lot of time, and before all of this happened. So that's been a real unexpected joy.
I think that's such a nice way to put it. We've got to be grateful for some of those, the big things and where we are, but also those, well, not so little things really. How fabulous to have your girls around you all the time, and how they...
I know, so super lucky. Yeah, they're amazing women. So yeah, feel very lucky for that.
So amazing. And tell us a little bit, Jazz, how are the team going more generally? How are people going with this, do you think, at the moment?
Yeah, it's really interesting. We've done, I mean, I guess just from a data perspective, we've done a couple of pulse checks with the team. So outside of course, all of the everyday conversations, to get a sense of where people are at, how they're feeling. And we did one back in May, and we just finished one just recently. And I mean, I guess the themes that if we're looking at sort of a larger sample size, which is sort of the majority of our teams, what they're telling us is that, there's a sense of unease about what the future holds, what the longer term sort of economic and I guess sort of financial security looks like. So, and it's not just, I think it's not just, you know, as we all know, it's not just us, it's our network, it's our community, it's our partners, it's our kids, it's, you know, our family and friends who are also being impacted by this. And that can cause a lot of, you know, you know, we're all connected. So, you know, that can cause a lot of worry and concern for those that are close to those people. So, you know, there's certainly that's one of the themes, this kind of unease. Like a lot of really positive stuff though around team feeling as though this time has enabled them to be super productive, much more empowered, has really kind of broken down some of those hierarchical sort of ways of working that sort of are in place maybe when you work together face to face. It sort of stripped a lot of that away. So teams really feeling as though they're empowered to make decisions, make choices about sort of how they work, what they focus on, and what that's doing is driving sort of higher impact outcomes, you know. So a lot of kind of comments about feeling productive and feeling grateful to be able to build into their day things that are important to them, whether it's, you know, exercising or spending time with their kids or whatever it might be that helps them, I guess, reset and regroup and then sort of go into another period of productivity after they do that. And yeah, sort of, you know, really enjoying that. I mean, it's been particularly difficult. I say that with the caveat of parents who have had to homeschool. I mean, obviously it doesn't apply to that group. You know, that's been really, really difficult. Or for team members that are maybe in living situations which are, you know, maybe less than ideal to have multiple people working from home in a smaller space and stuff, you know, that being a challenge. But certainly like a lot of compassion, a lot of connection between the team, a lot more communication than normal. So yeah, some surprising things that we probably wouldn't have expected to have seen.
Yeah. Does it feel like this is a culmination of so many things that you've learned across your career? Like what has it been like for you as, you know, of thinking about how you put people first and what you bring to that? How has it sort of challenged you, or what have you sort of seen emerge in your own skills that have come to the front through all of this?
I think there's been something, I think for me personally, that's been really, really powerful has been that, you know, for many of us, that sort of fear of failure and imposter syndrome and, you know, not feeling that whatever we do is good enough or we don't know enough or, you know, we have to know every single thing, particularly for women, I think, before we kind of step into the fray and give something a go. There wasn't time for any of that this time. There kind of almost wasn't time for that sort of self-doubt and overthinking and, you know, deliberating. It was like, we need to move and we need to do this and we need to make a decision and we need to sort of, you know, take the lead. I think, you know, many people that work in, you know, people and culture or HR, it's often sort of one of those functions that, I mean, ideally it's seen as a great strategic lever in a business, but in a lot of time it's seen more as a support function and quite transactional. So I think it was really that time where you know, they were sort of pushed to the front by necessity. And it was almost that kind of like just act and kind of all of what you just spoke about then, the stuff that you may have learned or the experiences you've had, you know, your natural inclination, even just to kind of, you know, that natural instinct to be humanistic, I think kind of came to the forefront and that sort of enabled people to, you know, act with a lot of bravery. I know for myself, it was, if there had been a bit of a project, you know, put together a plan for, you know, how you would deal with a situation like this. You kind of, you know, it's too big and it's too unexpected and sort of overwhelming to even be able to do that. So I think there was a lot of instinct that was required. And I think sort of working on instinct is kind of undervalued. I think we can kind of get into our heads too much and sometimes and overthink it. So it was very kind of instinctual and kind of like, what do we do? What do we do for our people? How do we make them feel safe? And how do we, you know, give them a sense of confidence and structure and understanding through a time that's like, you know, completely completely sort of unstructured and something that we haven't experienced before. So yeah, a lot of on gut instinct and a lot of collaboration. But I think certainly for HR in general, it's been, you know, it's been a good test, and I think it's been a good opportunity to show, you know, if there was any sense that, you know, that people aren't our most important resource, then, or our most important you know, differentiator, that if people didn't believe that, this was certainly a chance to be able to show how important people are, and we need to do the right thing. Yeah, I think so. And we were sort of lucky right from the beginning. We were able to, you know, as a leadership team at Swisse and H&H, we were sort of able to establish that sort of, you know, that we had these principles. The first one was like protect our people. Second was like protect the broader community. So play our part, you know, making sure that we sort of delivered on our sort of civic responsibility to do the right thing, and then of course like protect the business and make sure that we were able to sort of, you know, move the business through a period where and we were sort of, I guess, able to, you know, pivot's like an overused word, but, you know, to be able to make choices and to be able to, you know, have team focused on areas that maybe we weren't expecting, but it was what we needed right now. And sort of going back to those all the time with our people always being the number one priority has been like a really awesome sort of, yeah, a North Star. So when you're not sure, it's like, okay, that's what we need to do.
Yeah. That's brilliant. It's beautiful. I want to switch gears a little bit, because I'd love to go, we've gone like right into it here, which is what's going on. And we will
just go deep at the beginning.
we're going to get right into some of that as well, because I wanted to know more about what you have done, you know, around some of those cultural moves and some of what you're kind of seeing happen and evolve now. But I think it'd be great for everyone, and I know that they'll be so curious as well, to learn more about you. So, you know, now you are the Director of People and Culture at the incredible Swisse Wellness, you know, an enormous brand, but you've also worked across some other incredible retail brands, including Lush, what is going on with my words today? Lush, you were at Mecca previously before, and I also know from some of the another podcast that you've been on, you had a really eclectic background. Actually, you had a really interesting early career and upbringing. Do you want to go as far back as you want for us? Tell us a little bit about the journey of Jazz.
Yeah, sure. I'm definitely a child of the 70s, kind of raised by wolves, by sort of hippie parents that sort of became baby boomers. So I had a very nomadic childhood. So I was, you know, we sort of lived overseas for quite a few years and sort of traveled around in combis around Europe. And I remember my childhood parties, you know, it was quite free and, you know, wasn't super stable. I would say it wasn't what I'd call sort of a stable childhood or a conventional childhood. But I do think that I'm very close to my brother. I only have one sibling, and we really I think that really gave us a sense of adventure and helped both of us kind of see that you don't always have to take the most traveled paths, that there's sort of many ways to live your life. And that theme, I would say, it kind of continued on pretty much through my teenage years and into becoming a young adult. I was I was always very creative, and I wanted to be an artist when I grew up, and that was a real passion of mine. And it was something that sort of really continued sort of through my schooling. I wasn't a great student, so I was if I wasn't sort of engaged or interested, then I lost interest pretty quickly. By the time I finished high school, I was going through a fairly rebellious stage, I would say. I think I probably still have a partly rebellious nature inside of me, but I didn't want to go to, I certainly wasn't interested in going off to uni or anything like that. I was sort of very independent. I think that sort of nomadic childhood and that sort of being quite unconventional kind of really put that independent streak in me from quite a young age. And yeah, I mean, from that, I finished high school really, I was quite young for a variety of reasons. So I was only 16 when I finished year 12, and I just really wanted to go off and sort of see the world and you know, move out of home and, you know, sort of live my life, find myself and really establish myself as an independent kind of being from my parents. You know, I wanted to sort of get out of my family unit and go out there and really sort of forge my way. And I guess that really informed a very sort of back to front career path. For me, it was very, you know, definitely sort of my late teens and early 20s. I spent most of the time traveling and doing sort of, you know, work all over the world, mainly in sort of customer facing roles. And I do think that definitely, I've always loved people. I'm super curious about, you know, what makes us tick and how relationships work and why we behave and think the way that we do. And I think I've always been really, I mean, it's supernatural, right, for people to be in hospitality and retail when you're traveling and studying. But for me, it was never just a filler job. Like, I loved it. I really loved connecting with people, connecting with, you know, customers in shops I was working in, or, you know, building those relationships. And I really, you know, I loved delivering a great experience. And I think that was probably all of that work that I did when I was sort of traveling after high school. That's what really sort of set me on my path, starting to get into, you know, then I sort of started to forge a bit of a career in the retail world. You know, I really, you know, I'm a passionate, I want to say consumer, but, you know, you know, the brands I love them, you know, I love them so much, you know, and I really, you know, I love aesthetics and I really admire brands that are built from, you know, having a really strong purpose and have a really clear vision of what it is that they're wanting to deliver. So that sort of kicked me off to sort of that experience that I had when I was traveling really kicked me off to working with retail brands. And I sort of started doing that, I guess, sort of seriously in my early 20s. And I started working for Lush, who I was a massive fan of. So I just kind of went from brand I love to brand I love to brand I love. And that's kind of been a bit of a theme, I guess, from my entire career and now where I am at Swisse. So that was really, and even in that situation, I was very, you know, I never didn't want to be part of, you know, a store team. Like, I loved being on the floor. I loved being part of the store team and really, you know, in kind of understanding how you could authentically connect with people and really having an appreciation that we're all individuals, you know, we're all people, but everyone's an individual. Everyone's got a story to tell. And if you listen to those stories and understand where people are coming from, you know, that can be really powerful, you know, and in terms of whether it's about, you know, finding a great product for somebody or just having a great conversation that might sort of change the vibe or the kind of trajectory of their day. And I guess that was, that sort of then took me to want to delve deeper about in that whole sort of human behaviour space. And I ended up going back to uni in sort of in my mid-20s as a mature age student to do behavioural science. And at that time I sort of moved into Mecca and finished that degree over 3 years. And I was really lucky to be given the opportunity at Mecca to sort of move into L&D there in learning and development. So, and that sort of kicked me off, I guess, more on that sort of people, kind of more of a people space. It really, you know, I was energized by the thought of being able to create change, not just on a one-to-one level, like you do, say, sort of maybe more in customer service, but on I guess on a greater scale, to be able to have a positive impact on people, on larger teams, on an organization. To me, that was, you know, really, really inspiring.
Were there always leadership aspirations for you?
I think I've always probably been a natural. We use Gallup strengths at Swisse, so we often talk about our strengths. One of my top strengths is activator, so I like to put things into action, and so that sort of natural inclination to be able to to want to create action and create change and create movement, I think that means that sometimes, you know, you do end up being naturally in those leadership roles, because it's like, okay, let's do this, you know, let's get people around a concept, let's get them around a vision, let's put together a plan. How do we get this moving? So I think that's always been in me. I don't think I consciously had leadership aspirations. I think it was something that probably grew a little bit more organically.
Mm. So it's okay, how can I get more connected to people? It starts as a curiosity that you're in retail. What is the kind of impact that you can have? You start to think, I can actually do this at a bigger level. You get an opportunity to move into L&D over at Mecca. And then what happens from there?
So I ended up working in L&D at Mecca for sort of another 3 or 4 years. And that was such a great job. I mean, that's, you know, I feel super, super grateful to have worked with like both Jo Horgan at Mecca and also Marianne over at T2, you know, being able to work for these visionary sort of women, amazing entrepreneurs, and work closely with them, particularly as the business was sort of at its beginning, not at its beginning, but certainly beginning to grow, not sort of necessarily as big as they are now, was an incredible sort of learning opportunity. And, you know, by the time I sort of got to the end of my time at Mecca, I really... I guess I wanted to push myself a bit more. I think that sometimes, and certainly from where I was at that point, I was looking to have more impact than I was able to have in the roles that I'd had at Mecca. So I was wanting to, I guess, get more into a strategic role, a role that had more accountability, and a role also where I was able to kind of quantify the impact that I was having. Which can sometimes be a little bit harder when you're in that sort of L&D space, which can be like P&C, it can be seen as sort of more of a support function. So I ended up moving to T2. I had it on my, you know, when I sort of had about 6 months incubation in my mind about what I wanted to do next. And I definitely, T2 was at the top of my list. I am a crazy tea drinker, and sort of wrangled my way into having a cup of tea with someone that worked there to sort of understand what the culture was like. And yeah, I was just really lucky that they then recommended me for and some national retail manager role that they had going. And so I ended up working at T2 for another 7 years. Mm-hmm. And that was in a whole sort of variety of roles as we grew. But I think that was probably one of the bravest things I've ever done, because, you know, in a way that as we were talking about before, that whole sort of fear of failure and not being good enough. And, you know, to be honest, I didn't really have the runs on the board on paper to be sort of a shoo-in for that role. But, you know, I definitely had a connection with the women that sort of ran T2, and they saw something in me, and I saw something there that I really wanted to be part of. So I feel that was really fortuitous for both of us really. And, you know, I'm proud of the impact that I had at T2, and you know, the sort of the culture that we built there, then I know still exists to that day. And that, you know, that was incredible. I really learned so much, worked with and for so many great people. And they then we were acquired by Unilever towards the last couple of years that I was there, which was also another fantastic learning, you know, a huge difference between a small sort of startup in Australia and then becoming part of a big machine like Unilever, which that also taught me a lot as well, a lot of stuff that was really beneficial. And I'm really appreciative about that. And then really moving into where I am now, I guess by the end of my time there, I was, I felt a long way away from still having an impact, but not as connected to the people part of the business as I had been when I started. It was a lot broader, the role, by the time I finished up there. And I was really sort of conscious of, you know, for this next stage in my career, and also just had the self-awareness to know that really that's where I add the most value, was in that people space, and spreading myself very thin and very broad across a whole different areas that I wasn't particularly energized by. And there's, you know, a lot of people with a lot more ability than I had in particular parts of the role. And so I was like, that's it, people and culture, that's where I'm really going to sort of get some depth and really see what I can do in that space. And then sort of set about making that happen. and was really, I was quite intentional about wanting to move, and also wanting to move out of the retail space at that point, but also to a brand that was represented, values and a purpose and stuff that I really connected with, which preventative health is something that, I am really passionate about, always have been. So yeah, feel really proud to be sort of part of the purpose of Swisse as well.
Yeah. Very cool journey. I think the first time that I was introduced to you was actually one of my close friends who worked at Swisse as well was raving over drinks one night about your talent development program that you built. So can you tell us that, so you just mentioned there as well, talking about, feeling a little bit of that imposter syndrome and where can I go where I can really have a big impact? And if I'm going to do it, if this is the big move, this is Swisse, I really want to be in this brand. What was that kind of decision-making process where you were like, I'm going to go and do this thing? Is that huge shift that you made at Swisse around this talent development program? Talk to us about kind of developing the whole person approach. Is this where all of this started to evolve?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think, Swisse has got a great heritage in kind of, I guess, whole person thinking in around understanding that connection between, we're not just this face that rocks up to work. We're not just this machine and this automaton that kind of pumps out work. That we're much more than that. The elements of ourselves, physical, emotional, spiritual, mental, all of those pieces that we bring that sort of make us who we are. And I think Swisse really, I really connected to that sort of as part of even as I was going through the recruitment process, that was something that I really connected to. It really spoke to me. And I think when I started at Swisse, it was probably more grounded in, we had three sort of pillars around movement, nutrition and mind. It was quite grounded in those elements, and absolutely, that's all of that resonated with me, and they're really important. But I guess the work that we've done since I've been there, myself and our team, is really kind of broadened out that third pillar around mind. So absolutely, everybody knows sort of moving, eating well, looking after ourselves is absolutely, integral to being able to keep our energy where we want it to be able to, to make sure that we're sort of physically and mentally resilient, looking after our sleep, all of that kind of stuff. But that mind space, when I started, was very much around meditation, very much around mindfulness. We've got a strong history of being really dedicated to a meditation practice as a business. It's something that we do at 3 o'clock every day, even now virtually. And, team members are really encouraged and supported to be able to do that. And I guess once I came and I sort of learnt the business and sort of got an understanding of where the business was going, we wanted to kind of expand that out a bit and really think about, from a mind perspective, what else sits under there, that whole concept of, connection and, EQ and sort of self-awareness and community and, thinking beyond, I guess, just the individual, and just thinking beyond something kind of more narrow as sort of just having a meditation practice, which doesn't appeal to everybody. And then we sort of started to look at, absolutely, whole person wellness is really important, but also we're wanting to drive high performance. We're wanting to drive a high performance culture. For us, Swisse is definitely a high performance culture, absolutely, but making that connection between, wellness and being well, and then what that means in terms of our ability to be energized, to be able to be high performance within our role, and then not only just in our role, but the behavior, I guess, we bring to the business, and then what that means for our engagement, and that kind of mutually reinforcing, I guess, circle or triangle about how all of those, so it's not just about, I guess, being well for well's sake. From an organizational context, it's like, why is it important, you know, beyond just a humanistic approach, why is it important that, you know, that people are well and they're energized and they're engaged, and obviously around that performance piece and being able to drive the outcomes that we need. You know, it makes great sort of commercial sense. So a lot of the programs we've put in place around talent development, around building capability, around finding, I guess, less traditional ways to be able to support teams in their career development have really been about, you know, really believing that, you know, we attract amazing people to the business. You know, we have great talent. We're going to support them to bring their whole selves to work. And really sort of, you know, be authentic and show up as they truly are. We're going to make time and provide the resources for them to look after their wellness. And we're going to provide the kind of framework, support and programs that will help them, you know, grow their capability, understand where their career can go, give them opportunity, and, you know, obviously benefit us as an organisation. And a lot of the stuff, one of the ways we sort of kicked that off was we had a whole program that was really kind of focusing on those concepts. A lot of the concepts from positive psychology, you know, around things like, growth mindset and high quality connections, and, you know, a whole lot of finding your purpose, a whole lot of that stuff to be able to go, you know, how can we find more meaning and purpose in the work that we're doing? So it's not this list of, you know, tasks or things that you need to deliver. You're really understanding the value of what it is that you're doing every day, which in turn is, you know, more engaging, and team members feel, you know, feel that it's important, and feel that they're able to find that connection between what they value and the purpose of Swisse and H&H. And for us, our mission is to make the world healthy and happy. So that's, you know, it's a great mission. It's a great purpose. It's very, you know, it's very tangible to connect to. Obviously, the products that we, you know, produce and sell are all about supporting people in their health. So, you know, it's a really good one to connect in with. But I think, and maybe we'll talk about this a little bit later, you know, I've really, myself and our team, we've been thinking a lot about, you know, what does talent development look like now, and you know, how do we sort of really shake up the way that we have, you know, got our team set up, and the ways that we can empower them to really make decisions and kind of, you know, fail fast, fail forward, and kind of, you know, keep going and really remove the roadblocks that may have been stopping our team being able to perform at the level that they're capable of, just due to kind of the way that we've operated, you know, in the past, which isn't necessarily, it's quite progressive, but it's not, you know, it's not, even that isn't kind of where it needs to be now. So yeah, I feel like it's a really exciting time, even in all this challenge. I feel like from a people perspective, this is a really exciting time for us. I feel like we've got a window of opportunity just to really think very differently about work, you know, the nature of work, the nature of performance and kind of satisfaction, all of that stuff.
There's never been any time like it, I think, before, to accelerate so much of this kind of thinking. I've got kind of two parts to that question. I'm just going to quickly turn on a light here, though, because it's just turned into some kind of nightclub.
Oh my God, I love it. It kind of is like a nightclub.
I've got another light coming from here, but that's just gone down a little bit, and it's I just could feel this kind of pink
encroaching over you. The disco was encroaching.
To kind of putting you off a little bit. Yeah, I think the two parts just really there as well. I'm so curious, I'm sure other people are as well, you know, because you are, and I think, you know, even in interactions that I've had with you previously, other people from your team that you work with, as well as, you know, even, like I said, friends that work at Swisse, are so connected to the purpose, more than so many other organisations. They breathe it, they live it, you know, and it's kind of, I think it's rare to see a brand where it's so congruent, you know, what you're talking outwardly is actually seen inwardly as well. So I'm curious about how that has served you, do you think, during this, as the cultural challenges that you've had as an organisation? Do you feel like it's kept people, you know, has it actually kept people healthier, you know, in these kinds of challenging times? Are there sort of habits and rituals and things that you've put in do some of that? And then I would also love to get on to some of those questions that you're all tackling at the moment about, yeah, where to next, how your thinking has changed.
Yeah. Okay. So I'll start with the first one. So I think from our team perspective, I think, which I touched on before, which was around sort of, I guess, starting with our people as our, you know, our first priority, and making sure that that's always front of mind. But I think more practically, you know, we are really lucky at Swisse that we do have, you know, we have a lot of great programs available for the team. So from, as I said, things like daily meditation, you know, fitness classes, yoga, Pilates, etc., boxing, all kinds of stuff, opportunities to, you know, to volunteer, team lunches, all of that kind of thing. So we essentially just took those all online as soon as we sort of made the decision to leave the office. So that's all continued, and we've built in a whole lot of, I guess, both connection but also development opportunities for the team over that time as well. We've been really, some of the work that we've really got a lot of traction with this year is some work that we're doing with Emma Murray. Emma Murray's she's a high performance coach. She sort of works with elite athletes, and we sort of kicked off working with her sort of earlier in the year before lockdown went into place, and she's very much about how you develop the sort of intentional practice to be able to build your self-awareness around what's stopping you from performing at your best. Yeah. So it's, you know, it's maybe sounds a little bit kind of conceptual, but some very sort of practical ways in which we can, I guess, train ourselves to overcome that fear of failure and fear of other people's opinion, to be able to change our internal state so that when we are in a performance moment, whether it's, you know, doing a presentation or having an important conversation, or even doing some sort of, you know, deep creative work, that we're able to get ourselves into the internal state to mean that we're giving ourselves the best chance of delivering the best outcomes. So we had to sort of, you know, move on that and take that all online as well. And when I say online, sort of doing virtual coaching sessions with Emma and the team, as well as her running mindfulness and meditation practices with us as well as the more sort of capability building work that we've been doing with her. So we've really sort of had to look at, like, I'm sure, you know, like many organizations, look at how do we make sure that we support the team with as much of that stuff as we can. And I think the challenge has probably been, you know, even with all that awesomeness, you know, people, you know, they've just got screen fatigue. It's like they're on Zoom a lot for meetings and stuff like that. And it's like, oh, I don't know if I necessarily want to dial in and do a HIIT class again, sort of via the screen. So we've had to sort of look at how we can sort of shake it up, how we can do things differently, how we can find ways for the team to connect, to be able to, you know, still feel as though they're sharing information and that they're getting that sort of relationship building with the team, but sort of changing up the formats that we're offering. So I guess that's the way that we've sort of dealt with that side of it. Oh my God, and now I've had a complete mental blank and I can't remember the second half of the question.
I just broke all my rules as well. Wrong question, always a bad idea, especially when it's an enormous one. Kind of like, what around that question of like, what opportunities, you know, for you, again, like you've got a great rep in the market doing unique things when it comes to your leadership. So I'm talking about specifically you as Jazz. Like, what are the things that you are thinking about now, or the sorts of questions that you're kind of posing yourself? You might even be asking the leadership team about them. Like, what are the kinds of opportunities could be around culture and it could be around leadership or whatever, that weren't necessarily present before. You did kind of touch on them a little bit, how you're starting to ask some of those questions, but what do you think?
Yeah, so I think, so from a, I mean, I'll start with from a leadership perspective. I think that, I think really harnessing, you know, with my, I'm thinking, I guess if I think about myself and then more broadly about leadership in more general, that opportunity to be, you know, authentic can be an overused word, but to be the most authentic version of a leader that is, you know, that is who you are as you can. And I think that, you know, what this has created is, you know, getting an insight into people's lives and how they're living, and even just the, you know, the fact that you're so close. It's like you would never be so close, like face to face, as we are on Zoom with somebody in real life. It would probably be unusual, right? You would you wouldn't be picking up the nuances necessarily as much as you do. You can see when someone's distracted. You can, you know, you can, or even over the screen, you can feel if somebody's maybe a bit flat, or they're struggling, or they're really energized too. So I think, you know, nobody wants, I think that's good for team members. I think it's good for leaders. I think it brings us closer to being, you know, truly who we are as leaders. And I don't want to lose that. You know, I don't want to put up any of those kind of subconscious barriers again. Like, I would much rather just be, you know, this is who I am, and this is how I'm feeling, and you know, this is what I think, and I think that's, you know, any way that we can reduce those barriers that are sort of built up around, you know, someone's seniority, or, you know, their decision-making power, and all of that kind of stuff. I mean, you know, I just see that as disempowering, particularly for our younger team who, you know, who are so amazing and just like brimming with like ideas and talent and, you know, energy and all of that stuff. It's like, just get us out of the way and kind of get these guys to the front and sort of, you know, let them shine. So I feel like that's something, I think, moving from any kind of, I think there was a necessity for a bit more of a directional leadership style at the beginning, when it was like, okay, we need to work out what we're doing, and we need to kind of, you know, get everybody into a way of working and do that really quickly. But I think now that we're here and we're comfortable with that it really is about, you know, almost having a, you know, when I say a flatter organization, you know, not just removing any of those barriers that aren't really serving us, that means that they slow the business down, you know. And I think a lot of it's about, many businesses I'm sure would feel this way, so much of it now is about speed, you know. Even COVID itself, it's really accelerated, you know, a lot of things that were coming anyway, that we saw was coming, whether it's things like, you know, remote working, or, you know, whatever it might be, or, you know, more agile working and dynamic teams and all of that kind of stuff. And it's really just accelerated that through need. It's like, well, we had to do it. And then all the reasons of why we couldn't do it or why it was too hard were just sort of forgotten, because it was a necessity thing. So I do think that changes the nature of leadership. You know, I think you have to be, I mean, obviously being, you know, uber controlling or micromanaging or having a high ego, or, you know, all of that stuff's not going to work, I don't think, in the future. And I kind of feel like it's sort of, you know, maybe that time's sort of done. Yeah. It's like, you know, is there any reason you can't, as a leader, you can't be compassionate, you can't be, you know, honest, you can't, you know, connect sort of openly and authentically with people, and really your role is to remove roadblocks and absolutely make sure that people know what the priorities are, but how, you know, it's really about enabling and empowering teams so that you've got this winning team, and it's not necessarily about you as a leader anymore.
Yeah. And just what you said there as well, it's accelerated everything that you spoke about around that whole person model. You know, we can theorize about this, and that can be something that's aspirational, but all those aspects of bringing that whole self to everything that you do, and even heightening our emotional intelligence. You've put it, had another guest on the other day, Lee Duncan from IBM, they're talking about this concept of virtual EQ now as well. thinking about how leaders can get better at reading some of those visual cues. Because you just said then, you can tell when someone is this, 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 and this. And actually, like, some people can't. That is the thing as well. I think there's an energetic level of things that is taken away from these sorts of interactions now. Some things are amplified about how people might be feeling, and in other cases, a lot of things are hidden as well about what's actually going on underneath there. So that's kind of definitely going to be an ongoing or a big challenge for some leaders that maybe weren't up there necessarily on the EQ scale, I think.
Yeah, I think that's something that I know even sort of anecdotally, but also some of the data that our team shared with us, that when you're not in the same building as your team, your relationship with your leader, it's of course it's always important, but it becomes even more important. So if you've got a leader that's not necessarily, proactive in terms of communication, or, checking in, or, sharing of information, then that can be a lot more challenging, or one that maybe, isn't comfortable with giving a lot of trust and giving a lot of empowerment in the way that we need to work now, then that cannot be great. And I do think, for most, there's a range of things that businesses are going to do. It's like that, the vast majority, are not going to be going back to how things used to be. So whether it's about adopting a true hybrid approach to work, whether it's about going completely virtual and remote in the way that we're working, I think it's about understanding, because you are always going to have leaders who, maybe super high in ability and technical experience and skills, but that sort of that EQ or even that self-awareness may not necessarily be a strength. So it's about how do you, what are the things that would be better for us to get together to do face-to-face, from a collaboration or ideation or whatever, that's what we want to be spending our time when we're together doing. And what's the stuff that actually we're probably more productive doing remotely and doing apart. I know something that's really showed up for us is just the sort of objectivity you get when you're removed from being in a physical environment. It's just been really clear to us about, the processes, the ways of working that we have in place that are just not, are not supporting us in being high impact in the way that we're working. And, you sort of get that, that whole concept of sitting in a meeting for, whatever, an hour with, half the group not contributing. And then really the real conversation happens after the meeting's ended, and all of that kind of stuff, where it's sort of really given this view. I think people in a way are probably working more than they ever have in terms of sort of the length of time that they're working, because that's one of the real challenges, is setting boundaries, I think, when you are working virtually. But that whole piece about, it's really brought to the forefront for us that where our inefficiencies are, and the time that we're spending on things that are really quite sort of low impact, and also just from an individual perspective, not that energizing for our team to be involved with. So I think that's almost the next step for us. It's like having that strong vision of what, future working looks like for us at Swisse and H&H, in a way that takes the best of all the benefits our team have seen from working at home, but also using the time that we do have together in a really impactful way, and being quite ruthless about what we just need to stop doing, because it's not really sort of serving us or serving the business anymore.
Yeah. So, everything that you've said there, I think we're hearing anecdotally around from different organisations grappling with really similar things, but that sort of the intentionality is the thing that really stood out to me of what you've said there as well. We almost were kind of sleepwalking through our days of, you just show up and then, someone grabs you for a chat, and then you're off to this, and then you're in that meeting, and then you're doing that thing. And then before you know it, it's 4:00 and you're trying to jam in 3 or 4 hours work to get home at 7, or you're logging back on at night, and because of all of these things. And we were just so, it's about, like how we can maybe own that day so much more than we did previously, from everything down to, as you've just said there, the spaces that we occupy and what may we use this space for, and the people that we bring into certain conversations that are the right decision makers to do these sorts of things. Like that, you've had that, you know, the view outside now that you can start to do that a lot more. And I guess even that blended approach could give us an opportunity to do that. As you said, you know, we could do our deep work at home and we know that we're coming in for collaboration. It's definitely something that I know a lot of people are thinking about as well. So, and
I think even on more of a, I guess on a personal level, I know something like I'm really passionate about is kind of understanding your own personal, I guess kind of like your biorhythms. You know, when do you have the most energy during the day? What do you need to do to manage your energy to be able to, I guess, you know, keep your cortisol at a reasonable level and things like that. And I think when you're working remotely, you have more autonomy over that. So if you do have habits and ways of working that, you know, okay, I do my deep work at this time of the day because that's when I'm really energized, as an example, or, you know, I know that I need to knock off this stuff that I don't necessarily love as much. I need to do that early when I'm fresh and energized and don't procrastinate and kind of, but I think you have maybe less power over those decisions when you're working face to face, because as you said, there's so much sort of incidental stuff that sort of jumps in, and you can easily lose control over how you're sort of managing your day. I know for me personally, as well as my team, you know, we sort of reviewing our last quarter, and it was like, my God, how did we achieve so much stuff? You know, like, and not just like like really kind of great stuff that we've been talking about for, you know, a long time we've never got to. And it's this kind of high productivity and this ability people have had to really get into deep work. And as I said, even though people are saying they're working longer, there's this sort of sense of the work that they're doing is rewarding, and they're sort of really feeling that traction as well.
Yeah. So to that point, what are you thinking? Are there conversations about like what you're thinking as a group about doing going forward? Is it too early to make some of those decisions? I know people are kind of in between. You don't have to if they might not be released as well there, but are there conversations about permanent changes in the way that we work and run?
Yeah, I mean, I guess where our heads are at the moment is we're really about where do we see the areas that we want to focus on. So in terms of what makes sense for us to be, I guess, building into our sort of future strategy and our operational plan about the way that we're working and the way that our people are, I guess, experiencing working at Swisse, kind of knowing what we know now and the main areas that we're focused. And we don't have all of the answers yet. We've got some thoughts but some of the things we're sort of doing a little bit of test and learn and kind of seeing how we go. That whole bit about sort of rethinking the way that we work, how we speed up and empower decision making within the business. That's a big focus for us at the moment, and that's a combination of, you know, kind of a few things around sort of org design and you know, the opportunities our team will have to be able to work kind of cross-functionally and outside of their teams in more of these kind of, you know, incubator squads that are able to go after these, I guess, shorter term business opportunities, and they're really empowered to make that happen. So that's one part that we're kicking off. Swisse is probably a little bit more conventional in its kind of org design, you know, not super old fashioned, but not super progressive after also. So this is something we think is going to be, and we're sort of piloting that at the moment. So that's really exciting. I think a piece about certainly something that COVID's shown us is how interconnected we are. So not just as individuals, but us with our external partners, whether it's suppliers or our customer base. So really thinking about us as part of a bigger ecosystem, and how we can partner more impactfully with those external partners in a way that obviously benefits us, but it benefits the broader community. That piece around minimizing administration and hierarchy. So, in that ways of working, and again how we're designing the organization to free people up from work that isn't necessarily that impactful, and maybe that they're not enjoying doing as much. Absolutely committed to making hybrid work. That was something that really came through in the most recent survey we did. Is I think that's one of the biggest changes, that people are like, please, can we, we don't want this to go away. These are all the benefits I've seen. And that's certainly been my experience as well. So, that is our new reality. So really committed to that. But as I said before, kind of really thinking about how we, we don't want it to be like this. We really want to understand when it's going to be more beneficial and impactful for our people to be face-to-face and when not. I think around talent, we're really thinking a lot about how we reimagine, I guess, our talent development approach, and how we really, I guess, sort of identify and unleash those future leaders in the business, and really give them the power and give the autonomy to have the impact that we know that they can have. And I think that piece too around, we do a fair bit in the learning space, but in a way it's probably not as experiential as we would want it to be. And, really thinking about, and this is kind of the way that I think about it. And I know for a lot of our team, it's like, you need to be marketable for your whole career. If you don't keep learning, those future skills, that the demand to continue to have new skills that's not going to go away, and the more that we're able to benefit from the advantages that technology gives us, that we're able to kind of elevate, I guess, the nature of the work that we're doing, then I think that, we really need to have more of a intentional approach about what's the skills and talent we kind of need to bring into the business, and what's the role of that continuous learning for our team, so that we give them that, help them kind of continue to build that career pathway for themselves. And then I think probably finally that what is the role of the executive team? And I mean, our MD, he's fantastic. And it's kind of like, what's that? He's been very present and very sort of very transparent, a lot of communication over this time. And, really thinking about, how do we get the best out of having that experience and that kind of seniority in the business, but not in a way that is stifling the kind of, the talent and the creativity and stuff that's coming through. So I guess they're kind of the areas that we're focused on. And we want to move quickly. I feel like, and I heard someone the other day sort of use the analogy of kind of the horror of Port Arthur. And, what that situation gave us was that, at that time, when that tragedy happened, there was this window of opportunity for the gun buyback, and that changed the trajectory of gun ownership for us in Australia, so substantially. And you kind of go, that wasn't something that could have happened without having that, terrible thing happen. I mean, it could have, but it certainly wouldn't have happened as quickly and decisively. So, this is also something which is hugely challenging, the environment we're in, but, we've got this window of opportunity to really kind of change the way we're not just working, but the way we're living, I think. So I feel like there's so much opportunity in all of this challenge.
That's such a good one to finish on as well, because that's so optimistic. And you said at the very beginning of this, I am excited and I'm optimistic. And what you're talking about there as well is so great to hear that. I think it can be very tempting for leaders and people at all levels at the moment just to be that firefighting and head down and I've got to get through this and, just looking at your feet almost for the next thing. But what we need are leaders that are looking out here. We need people who are prepared to look up and see, what is coming, and rather than just responding, what are the actual opportunities that this thing might present as, you know, as grim and bleak as it is at times and still is. Yeah, it's so good to hear. And I think that's a great inspirational takeaway for a lot of leaders out there, is how can they do more of that? All of us challenge ourselves to do more of that. What is the opportunity in this right now?
Sure.
Thank you so much for joining us,
Oh
Jazz.
my gosh, of course. I love it. I was so excited for you to ask me. So thank you so much for having me.
It's been an absolute delight having you on today. So thank you so much. I'm sure everyone's got a lot out of it. We will include in the details here, the details to your LinkedIn profile as well. So I'm sure you'd encourage people to connect with you. And
oh my gosh, of course. I would love to.
Yeah. So thank you for being so generous. And we will, we'll talk to you soon.
Awesome. Thanks, Fiona.
Bye.
Hey, everybody.